In 2018, the most powerful Christian institution on earth made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the scientific and religious communities simultaneously. The Vatican, the Catholic Church under Pope Francis, officially declared that demonic possessions were rising so rapidly across the world that they were running out of trained exorcists to handle the cases. They began training priests over the telephone because the volume of cases was simply too overwhelming to manage any other way. When the Vatican panics, the world should pay attention. Italy, a country most people associate with luxury, art, and beautiful food. But here is a statistic that will stop you in your tracks. Every single year, 500,000 cases of demonic possession are reported in Italy alone. 500,000. And in America, the number of trained exorcists grew from just 12 in 2005 to over 150 today, a tenfold increase in less than 20 years. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, Ruqyah clinics are multiplying faster than anyone can count. Something is happening on a global scale. And today, we are going to understand exactly what it is, and why Islamic scholarship predicted it over 1,400 years ago. Let us begin with 3 real cases, documented, verified, and so disturbing that Hollywood turned all 3 of them into major films. But here is what nobody tells you when they hand you the popcorn. These were not fiction. Case number 1. Anneliese Michel, a young German Catholic woman who, in the early 1970s, began exhibiting behavior that no medical explanation could account for. She began speaking in deep male voices. She spoke fluently in ancient Greek and Aramaic, languages she had never studied, never heard, and had no access to. She contorted her body into positions that human bones are physically incapable of achieving. She performed 600 genuflections, kneeling and rising, in a single day until her knees literally broke. Doctors diagnosed epilepsy and psychosis. But they had no answer for one thing: bite marks that appeared on parts of her body that her own hands could not physically reach. In 2005, Hollywood released The Exorcism of Emily Rose based on her story. Most people watched it as a horror film and moved on. They forgot it was real. Case number 2 takes us to Loudun, France in 1632. In an Ursuline convent, 17 nuns simultaneously reported possession. They claimed to see shadowy figures standing beside their beds in the night. Screams that were not human echoed through the convent walls. When exorcists were called, what they witnessed defied every rational explanation. Nuns levitating off the ground, climbing walls, speaking languages they had never learned. But the most extraordinary detail was this. When the entities possessing them were asked to identify themselves, every single one of them named the same person, a local priest named Father Urbain Grandier. They claimed he had made a contract with Satan and surrendered their bodies to demonic forces. When police searched Grandier's belongings, they found a contract written backwards, bearing what appeared to be the signatures of major demonic entities, including Asmodeus and Leviathan. Grandier was burned alive. But the possessions continued for years after his death. In 1971, Hollywood made The Devils based on this case. Again, most people filed it under horror and forgot it was documented history. Case number 3 is the most important of all, because this one has police reports and medical witness statements attached to it. Indiana, 2014. The LaToya Ammons case. Police Captain Charles Austin, 30 years on the force, officially reported witnessing a 9-year-old child walk backwards up a wall to the ceiling in front of hospital staff. Social worker Valerie Washington submitted a sworn statement describing a child being lifted into the air by invisible hands and thrown against a wall. Captain Austin stated on record, "I did not believe in these things before that night. What was in that house was not human. The house was eventually demolished." But the official documentation remains. In 2024, a film called The Deliverance was made based on this case. And again, most people watched it as entertainment and never asked the question that actually matters. Why is this happening more and more? In 2024, not in medieval Europe. In modern America with police witnesses and medical records. But before we go further, there is something important we must address. Because where there is genuine fear, there is always exploitation. In 2019 in Rawalpindi, a young girl was brought to a so-called faith healer who claimed she was possessed by an ifrit. He kept her locked in his basement for 3 days without food, beating her with chains. When she screamed, the people around were told, "That is not the girl screaming. That is the Jinn screaming as it leaves her body. 3 days later, her body was recovered from that basement. She was dead. That was not Jinn possession. That was human evil, dressed in religious clothing. In 2018 in Karachi, police arrested a man who was using sodium, a chemical that ignites when it touches water, to create the illusion of burning Jinn in front of desperate families. He was charging them enormous sums of money to perform this chemical trick. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim and contemporary Islamic scholars give us 3 ways to identify whether someone is a genuine Ruqyah or a fraud. First, does he ask for your mother's name? A genuine Ruqyah never needs it. Only someone performing sir requires it. Second, does he use Quranic recitation as his primary tool, or does he draw strange symbols and call on entities? Third, does he insist on being alone with a woman without her mahram present? A genuine Ruqyah always performs Ruqyah with the patient's mahram present. These 3 questions will protect you from the frauds. Now the question that every thoughtful person asks, how does Jinn possession actually work? Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated that shaitan runs through the veins of human beings like blood. In contemporary scientific language, this maps remarkably closely to what we understand about electromagnetic interference. Our brains operate on electrical signals. The central nervous system is essentially a biological electrical network. When a Jinn possesses a human being, Islamic scholarship describes it as the entity gaining control over the central nervous system, which explains why possessed individuals suddenly speak languages they have never learned, display physical capabilities beyond their normal anatomy, and exhibit personality changes so complete they appear to become different people entirely. This is also why in South Asian tradition, certain large trees are associated with Jinn habitation. Science identifies unusually high negative ion concentrations around such trees, while Islamic tradition describes them as portals between worlds. Both observations are pointing at the same reality from different angles. And this brings us to the single most important concept in this entire discussion: spiritual protection. Ibn al-Qayyim wrote extensively about the relationship between a person's spiritual state and their vulnerability to Jinn interference. The principle is direct. When your spiritual defenses are strong, Jinn cannot penetrate them. When they are weak, the door opens. What weakens your spiritual defense? Abandoning salah, abandoning the recitation of Quran, abandoning dhikr, living in a state of persistent sin. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 275, that those who consume riba will be raised on the day of judgment like someone who has been driven mad by shaitan's touch. This is Quranic evidence, explicit, direct, that shaitan's touch can affect the human mind and body. The protection is not complicated. It is Ayat al-Kursi before sleep. It is the morning and evening adhkar. It is wudu maintained throughout the day. It is salah performed on time. These are not rituals, they are a spiritual immune system. And when you abandon them, you leave yourself exposed. Islamic history gives us a story that answers this more powerfully than any scientific paper ever could. During the era of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the servant of a caliph became possessed. She screamed. Her eyes rolled back. The possession was severe and persistent. When the news reached Imam Ahmad, he sent his iron sandal with a trusted Ruqyah to the woman. The Ruqyah showed the sandal to the Jinn possessing her and said, "Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal has sent you a message. Leave this body." The Jinn immediately said, "I will leave." Because Ahmad ibn Hanbal has obeyed Allah, and everything fears those who truly obey Allah. Sometime later, Imam Ahmad passed away, and the Jinn returned to that same body. The people showed the sandal again. This time the Jinn laughed and said, "I am not afraid of an iron sandal. Imam Ahmad is gone." The cure was never in the sandal. The cure was in the taqwa of the one who owned it. This single story contains the entire theology of protection in one lesson. It is not the object. It is never the object. It is always the relationship with Allah. Across all 4 schools of Islamic jurisprudence, the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali, there is complete consensus on one point. Not one of them denies the reality of Jinn possession. Imam Abu Hanifa emphasized Ruqyah and Ta'awud. Imam Malik outlined specific supplications for the evil eye. Imam al-Shafi'i rejected claims of befriending or controlling jinn. Imam Ahmad used the approach of commanding and threatening the jinn with the authority of Allah. 4 different methodologies. 1 shared understanding. Jinn possession is real. It has always been real. And the scholars of this ummah have always known how to address it. So now we return to the question we opened with. Why is all of this accelerating? Why now? Why is the Vatican training exorcists over the phone? Why are Ruqyah clinics multiplying across Indonesia? Why are possession cases rising tenfold in America in under 2 decades? The answer that Islamic scholarship points to is precise and sobering. We are living in the end times. The veil between the human world and the jinn world is becoming thinner. And this thinning of the veil is not random. It is preparation. A hadith recorded in Ibn Majah states clearly that before the day of judgment, evil and corruption will spread openly. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told us that the greatest fitna his ummah would face is the Dajjal. And the Dajjal's greatest tool will be supernatural deception. He will use jinn and shayateen to perform miracles that confuse entire nations, making people doubt their faith and follow falsehood. The rise in possession cases we are witnessing globally is not coincidence. It is the army being assembled before the commander arrives. But here is what we must never lose sight of. The same tradition that warns us about what is coming also gives us complete protection against it. Surah Al-Baqarah recited in the home drives shaitan away for 3 days. This is an authenticated hadith. Ayat al-Kursi, before sleep, places an angel to guard you until morning. The morning and evening adhkar form a shield around you throughout the day. Wudu is not just physical cleanliness. It is electromagnetic protection for the spiritual body. Prayer on time is the single most powerful act of strengthening your spiritual immune system. Every Islamic scholar who has worked in Ruqyah across generations agrees on one finding. The people most vulnerable to jinn interference are those who have disconnected from their salah, their Quran, and their remembrance of Allah. And the people who are most protected are not the most educated or the most wealthy or the most powerful. They are the most consistent in their worship. The next time you are sitting alone in a room and you feel as though something is watching you, do not dismiss it as imagination, but do not fear it either, because the entity watching you is measuring your spiritual defenses. And if those defenses are strong, built from salah, from dhikr, from Quran, from taqwa, it cannot touch you. It has no permission. It has no pathway in. The question this video leaves you with is simple, and it is serious. Are you building those defenses every single day? Are you giving your children those defenses before this world asks them to face what is coming? Because what is coming, according to the Quran, according to the Hadith, and according to everything the world is now showing us with its own data, is not small. And the only preparation that will matter is the one you build before it arrives. The Vatican is panicking. The data is undeniable. The scholars predicted this over 1,000 years ago, and Allah gave us the protection before the threat even arrived. The question was never whether jinn possession is real. The question is whether you are taking your spiritual protection as seriously as the threat deserves. May Allah protect you, your family, and your home from every form of evil, seen and unseen. Ameen. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more content that connects our faith to the world we are living in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.